welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Sharon, aka the Mel Nostalgic Runner, and yes, my hair is back to its natural state. Yes. But anyway, yeah, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Sharon, aka Mel Nostalgic Runner. We are back for another episode of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and this is hold on. You know I got you. You know I got you. Hold on. Season 5, episode 4. Okay. And this was good to me. I honestly, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is 4 for 4 when it comes to episodes. Just home run. And random Chicago news. The Cubs are still in it when it comes to the playoffs. Game 5. We're cheering for them because I cheer for anything and everything Chicago. And they're really right now the only sports team that is doing good right now. But anyway, when I did that, I just thought of it. I was like, okay, anyway. But without further ado, let's get into the episode. So we continue where we left off because remember the last episode was a to be continued. And we're at Lisa's luncheon. And this is where Whitney stormed off. And one thing I didn't address last week during the review, and I'm going to address it right now. Whitney was wrong. Lisa was wrong for sure because she was just saying all these crazy things to Whitney. But as soon as Whitney decided to get physical with Lisa, that's where she lost the plot for me. Because Whitney, you got to have more self-control than that. And honestly, I feel like Lisa had a lot of self-control because once you do that, and what happened here was Whitney threw a napkin at Lisa. Lisa threw right back at her. And then Whitney proceeded to get in Lisa's face. A lesser than cool temperament version of me, aka younger me, a fight would have happened there. A physical fight. So like, I commend Lisa at this moment holding her restraint and not knocking her out, because Whitney, with so much love, you have to learn to stop getting in people's face. And honestly, it's not just a Whitney thing. Lisa does it too. A lot of the women on all these shows do it, and y'all need to learn to stop doing that, because you never know when someone's going to snap at you. So you really should stop doing that. Your words, you can argue with that. And if you can't argue with that, then maybe you need to reevaluate. But that's neither here nor there. I just had to throw that out there because I feel like in last week's episode when I was reviewing, I kind of just breezed over it because with Salt Lake City and all the conflict and fighting that happens, there's so much going on. I ain't gonna hold you. At the end of every single episode, when it's like a group event and they're doing all that, it's so overly stimulating for me that I sometimes don't catch everything initially when I watch it. And I have to rewatch it to see it again. And a lot of my reactions, a lot of my videos, even though the review might be late, it's after my first watch. So I just wanted to add that out there because I'm not someone who condones violence. And I also don't want to come off as hypocritical. So I just wanted to address that. Anyway, so, but after Whitney storms off, Bronwyn's defending, Whitney is like, why do you always go below the belt and try to bring out news and businesses on other people when you yourself can't even handle it when it happens to you? And that's kind of what she was getting at when it comes to Lisa. And Lisa didn't really, couldn't really respond to her. And then it went back to being Lisa versus Angie yet again. And they were just taking it to hell. Angie, girl, you were not letting off the gas when it came to Lisa. And I ain't gonna hold you. It was kind of funny to me, but then she took it there, and I know what she was trying to do, but with these Housewives shows, you have to basically just stay away from it altogether. What she did was she mentioned Lisa's kids' products and how they're not successful, and why is she trying to use Angie to help her with basically pushing her kids' products when she doesn't do anything to help Angie. And so, of course, like all housewives will do, even though she wasn't talking about her kids, anything that's like somewhat related to the kids, she's going to say you're talking about her kids. And so then, of course, it's escalating so badly. And Lisa just starts throwing out all these accusations out there. And finally, it gets so bad that even Heather chimed in. She's like, yo, both of y'all stop. And she really kind of actually tells both. She tells Angie off, but she doesn't do it in a way where it's that bad. She actually puts most of her energy into Lisa because she's like, Lisa, this is your problem. And she didn't do it in a way where she was being disrespectful or going below the belt. She basically did it. She kind of grown woman her. And I ain't mad at it. I ain't gonna hold you. And this is really the Heather I've been wanting for seasons now. This is a truly neutral Heather. And Heather, I wish you could have been like this for like 2 seasons now. And you're finally coming into your own and realizing, I gotta hold people accountable across the board. And she did a good job at that. To the point where Lisa broke down and started crying. She broke them both down. Like basically, she was able to quiet them both. Like, respectfully, Andy can't even do that when them two going back and forth during the reunion. But Heather was able to get them to both quiet. And I was like, this is what I was looking for from you, Heather, finally. And basically Lisa breaks down. She starts crying and she's just like, you're right. I'm trying to show my vulnerability, but I was raised very differently than all of y'all. But the problem is, okay, I feel like at this time when she said that, she didn't mean it in an elitist way. But the problem is, most of her speech comes off like she is coming from that space because she normally is. But I think at this moment she actually wasn't, because once she started talking more, then I was like, okay. But the thing is, the problem is you keep saying these things that you're not like other people. You need to explain that more, because I feel like a lot of the women, at least the women maybe know, but like us as viewers, we don't know how you're different from everyone else. Like, please expound on that when you say that. If she was to expound on whenever she says that, instead of giving us this surface answer of her, how she's different from everyone else, I feel like we would view it differently. Because I'm pretty sure all the women have been raised differently than others. You know? I think only a handful of them have similar backgrounds. But like, a lot of them are different. You know? And that's what makes an ensemble cast and what makes the world go round. But you need to expound on that when you try to separate yourself from others. You know? That way, we can at least, you can bring it back where you're still relatable. And that's essentially when Heather was kind of telling Lisa about herself. She's like, girl, you're not relatable. Because she's not. She's been insufferable the past 3 episodes. I feel like even Lisa fans were like, girl, it was kind of bad. But anyway, so she starts crying. She talks about a little bit of what's going on, and she kind of tries to apologize, but she still doesn't really own up to like what she has going on with her and why she is hurt. She kind of still keeps it surface. And the thing is, I feel like a lot of people feels like she's incapable of it. I don't think she is. I think she is when it comes to a lot of these women. And I think a lot of it is she can't do it with the women. I'm pretty sure she talks to her husband about more in-depth stuff and not so surface stuff. But anyway, they do end up ending things on a high note. They all start crying and they all kind of just like piece it up because, and then they basically cheers, and that's the end of that scene. Moving on. Okay, next we have a Real Housewives montage. And normally I don't talk about Housewives montage very long. But the reason why this is my thumbnail, this was the funniest. Heather and Mary, their scenes together, even though sometimes it's Heather being the butt of the joke, this time I I'm loving that Heather and Mary are getting along and actually getting along on screen. I'm loving this version of them too. It's just a more light version of both of them. And the thing that's kind of wild about Mary being more lighter is she has a lot more going on when it comes to her personal life than ever. You know, it seems like her personal life's in major turmoil, but she is bringing this lightness to the show. And it's so Libra of her. I was like, man, she's such a Libra, because that is a Libra thing. And because I'm an Aries sun, but I'm a Libra moon, so I see both sides of it. I'm kind of a walking contradiction, if you will, at times. But I feel, and honestly, I've been told this about myself too. I've been told that, like, I bring a lightness to a room, even though I might be going through my own personal hell. And I feel like that is, in this scene, I was like, man, I really see it. Because basically, Heather was confessing about how she is hungover. She was like, because she basically mentions how she took her own tequila shot, and then she took Angie's tequila shot. No, she took Mary's tequila shot. She took someone else's tequila shot other than her own, so she's like hungover. And Mary was like, yeah, I can't do tequila. It tastes like hospital to me. She's like, it tastes like medicine. It tastes like hospital. I was like, I died. Because then when she tried to elaborate on it even more, Heather, it's just like, Heather's expressions whenever Mary's describing something that is a Maryism, it is so funny to me. And that's why that's the thumbnail. But Mary wasn't completely wrong, but she's not really right all at the same time, and that's why it's funny. So I understand what Mary's saying. Bad tequila tastes like hospital. Bad liquor of any sort can kind of taste like hospital. It's like a very chemically taste. It's chemically. There you go. I think that's more what she means. And she was, because Heather, the way she elaborates, like, wait, something can taste like hospital? I thought I could only smell. She's like, well, you smell and like taste, you use the same things to do all that. Like, she went into a whole entire science of it all. I'm like, well, she's not really wrong. But it also was like shade, and I don't think she realized it was shade. But I think she said in general tequila tastes like hospital. But I hope she didn't mean that Lisa's tequila tastes like hospital. But probably to Mary, all tequila tastes like that, because that's just not her thing. And I get that. Because I will disagree when it comes to the part that I think she's wrong about is, I don't think all tequila tastes like hospital. I think bad tequila, bad liquor doesn't taste good. But well done, balanced liquors of all sorts tastes okay. It really shouldn't taste that much at all if it's really, really good and high quality. Anyway, again, like I said, this is the longest. I was going to go into like a Housewives montage because it was them two and they just cracked me up. But then we also see another montage, which was also equally as funny, but not quite, because it just isn't going to be that, is Whitney and Justin. And Whitney's helping her put, they're in a new house now. So he's trying to install the pole, because she has a pole in her house. And Whitney's basically kind of describing how she wants that version of her back. And she's right. Season 1 and 2, really season 1 of this show, Whitney was a different person. And I actually kind of miss that version of her. She was more the fun-loving party girl type girl. And she's going to talk about it later on in the episode. But let me see. Yeah, she talks about it later on in the episode, where I'll just get into it now because we'll get into the other segment with her. But she basically means her and her business failing. And what she's describing to me, in my opinion, is she's describing how like her heart wasn't really into becoming this version that she became. She felt like she did it because she felt like she had to, because the other version of her, which is really the real her, got Justin fired and got them all caught up. But this pretty much did the same thing, if not worse, because they lost money on top of it. Their own money on top of it. So she's reevaluating. She's like, was it even worth me changing my personality? I should have just stayed myself and not try to be the same person, not try to push myself to be a version of myself that I'm not really all the way. And I know she says she's in therapy, but to me, this just kind of, it still is a little bit of the Mormon story, a little bit to me. You're still, I think that's still that residual of being raised Mormon and trying to be this perfect version of yourself that may not even be you at all. It's what you want others to see in you versus who you actually really are. And I don't think you necessarily need to be Mormon to go through this, because I mean, I feel like I went through it too. It's just anyone that has very high expectations of themselves and are to a certain extent perfectionists. And I am. So, I'm a recovering perfectionist, because now I live life the way I want to live life, but it took me a long time to get there. So anyway, I did like, I'm kind of skipping over, but that's pretty much Whitney's story. That's her storyline basically this season. Anyway, moving on. So next here we have Bronwyn, and she meets Lisa at her new lounge to talk. Now, this is another thing, Lisa, that I would love from you. I want to know why and how this lounge came about. No one understands where this lounge came from. I've watched other reviewers review this show, and no one understands where this lounge came from. Like, shouldn't that be part of your storyline to explain that to us? And really, shouldn't we have talked about this last season of how this was happening? But instead, like, Lisa's a deflector. And she doesn't talk about herself or what she has really going on much. The most that she does is talk about her children, but not really what she herself has going on. So it would be nice to know how this came about. And hopefully this season we'll get more into it. Maybe once she invites the ladies, she will go into all the ladies to this lounge. Maybe she'll then explain how this happened. Because I'm still like just scratching my head like, where did this lounge come from? But anyway, so Bronwyn and Lisa finally have their sit down, and they kind of get to the bottom of it, that the root of what caused their issues was a grandparent situation. Bronwyn's baby's father's parents, that whole situation. And Bronwyn finally kind of explains that she is good now because Gwen's good. She's like, we got past that. Gwen's good, so therefore I'm good. But at the same time, it does, like, I understand now, after we're on the other side of saying angry, horrible things to each other, that your original intent of interfering was to help. It wasn't to hurt. And then she was like, I even will acknowledge the fact that you put yourself in an awkward situation to even try to help. Because, you know, of the opposite stories being told. And Lisa acknowledges it and understands it. And then Lisa also apologizes. She's like, yeah, I understand that wasn't good. Because this is the thing that they didn't talk about in the scene. But if you remember last season, how Lisa pretty much did a similar thing to her husband, John. And looking back, she said that was the worst thing she could have did. She kind of did the same thing again, basically. Because her husband, John, have a very similar situation. But only with John, it was his parent, he was adopted. So she tried to basically be the fixer and link him to his original parents, and it didn't go well. Because it wasn't like they were adopted parents that were looking for him. They had a whole entire new family, and in their world, he didn't exist. So it basically made him feel worse, and it made him relive everything in not in a good way. And so I think Lisa explained this not on the show, but on the after show last season. But I think that's why Lisa can literally understand where Bronwyn's coming from when it comes to this, because it literally is a pretty similar situation. But anyway, so they both apologize about saying horrible things to each other. And then they both explain that they have these boundaries that once you go there with them, it's not okay. And with Lisa, she says, once you bring John into it, I'm going to go on the defense immediately. And same thing with my kids. And so, and we know the first 3 episodes, everyone's been bringing up the John situation because of this man, this unknown man with the Amex card that does bring him into it. And so it's a little funny there. And then, so she was like, so yeah, moving forward, can we leave John out of this and even the kids? And Braun was like, well, I never talk about your kids, but I never will either. But she was like, and then my boundary is once you bring Todd up, it's a problem. I'm going to need you to stop bringing up Todd. Like, and from Bronwyn's perspective, she's like, I don't want you to weaponize my marriage and make it where I'm basically being a hoe for my husband. Because really, does that even make any sense? How are you a hoe for your husband? That's your husband. You're allowed to do whatever you want to do with your husband. Okay? But Braun was like, that was a problem. Like, you were insinuating something that I basically am sleeping with my husband for, like, you basically insinuate I'm a gold digger. And that's not okay. And they acknowledge it. And then, when after Lisa mentions, like, okay, well, after Braun says, like, I've never talked about your kids, but how are your kids doing? And Lisa explains and gives an update that yes, now I forgot which son it is, but the older son, he's almost done with his mission, so he's gonna be back soon. It flew by. He's doing great. And then so that's another thing. And then Bronwyn shares that she her daughter and her boyfriend now live with her, and then now she has her mom there as well. And Lisa's like, wow, you got a full house now. And only thing that I will say about this, even though they made up and everything, if I was Bronwyn, I would have not given her more information. Not yet. Like, I feel like when you argue with someone, especially for how low they went, are you that much in a hurry to bring them back into your life like that? It seemed very quick. It wouldn't be a one and done thing. Like, but we'll see. Hopefully this doesn't bite Bronwyn in the butt later on, but I feel like it will, because yeah. But anyway, so Bronwyn literally describes her argument style to the T when they're about to hug each other. She's like, yeah, hopefully we're good now. And Bronwyn's like, yeah, I'm more of a cutting type of person, while you're more of a loud person when it comes to argument style. And that is totally correct. Like, Bronwyn's a wordsmith, and Lisa gets loud and animated so quickly, and that's how they both are. That's the way they argue. But anyway, they hug one more time, and that's that on that. So now in the next scene, we have Mary and her cousin Big Joe, and you can tell they're related. But anyway, they are finally at the church. The church is almost fully renovated, and so we're talking more about the church renovations and whatnot. And turns out that her cousin is a contractor, and she did shade him in the confession. It's like, yeah, he's family, he's all I got, but he's also family, and took a full advantage of being a family member and took his time with this contracting and getting this renovation done. And you know what? From all my friends I've talked to that have had to work with contractors, I feel like that is a common thing that I've heard too often. And I'm not, even with me buying my new place, there are some things I want to change, but I'm not in a hurry to do that just because I don't want to have to deal with that kind of thing. Like, for example, in this room, I do want to change the flooring because the flooring just kind of looks like meh. But, that's a later on thing. Right now, the aesthetic and what I got going on in my place looks good enough for me. So I'm not really making that many changes. I also want to change the door in this room. And yeah, there's just some things I would like to change in this room. And even in my room, there's quite a few things I want to change. But anyway, it just kind of remind me of that. But then they kind of get into Robert Jr. and they talk about how, like, Robert Jr. used to be part of the church and everything. And they're hopeful that maybe once this church is open, they could get him more back involved in the church. And they're going to basically make an attempt to try to save him. but like religiously saved him. And Mary opens up about how like she wasn't going through similar things, but she was like, kind of rebelling and doing her own thing for a while. And and we all go through it where we're doing our own thing for a while and it works until it doesn't. And usually it always is, it works until it doesn't. That's usually always the story. And she, was like, the church, and me being saved, it helped. It really helped me have direction. And there it goes. That's what she's very aware of what he's needing. He's needing direction. I feel like it's very obvious to most of us that that's what he's needing is direction. And yeah, church is an avenue, but I feel like there's other things that they could have done to give him direction. But unfortunately, I think they waited too late to do it. And, it is what it is now. But she knows in her heart, she even mentions in the confessional, at this point, now that he's being a lot more transparent with me. Now, even when he doesn't say it, I know what it is. So she knows that he fully relapsed. It wasn't just weed. She knows that. And I kind of had a feeling when I was watching the episode that's, the episode that he was on, that it wasn't just weed. Because that didn't give me just a weed vibe. Because I feel like when you do just weed, your behavior and look doesn't change that much. Unless you got some super strong stuff. But it did give me more of like the pills. Basically the narcotics of it all. And so she's very aware of it. And yeah, but she's basically just going to try her best with that situation. And then from there, they do end up talking about her mom. And we kind of get more into the history about the church again. And she pretty much doubles down from what, the story was originally. And that is her grandma always wanted her to inherit the church. And the mom wasn't really with it. And her mom tried to bring people into the church ahead of time before Mary was even ready to take on the church, to basically take over the church. Because her mom wanted the power of the church. And Mary was like, I never necessarily ever wanted the church. It's just that is what my grandma wanted. And I was going to do that. So they followed what grandma wanted. And so she kind of opens up more about her estrangement with her mom and how her mom was saying all these crazy things about her on, in the media and stuff like that. And now the full circle is her mom's no longer with her. Her mom passed away. And they never did get closure. They never did patch up their relationship. And Mary confesses in her confessional, she's like, it already felt real when we became estranged, but now it feels even more real. And so we know Mary's going through some things. So, yeah, that was another heavy scene. Mary's scenes be heavy, but it's real. It's what, it's what's necessary. I'm not going to hold you. I feel like these scenes bring the show back down to earth. Because I feel like it's very, kind of like how the background music is very much like this a lot of times, but then her scenes ground you, bring you back down to earth, which is kind of weird because I need to see. I'm wondering, does she have some earth signs in her chart? Because she definitely, like, outwardly she is a Libra, but she definitely has things about her that brings you back down to earth. But anyway, moving on. Okay, so we have this next scene where Angie confesses to all of us that even though she's been in the salon industry forever. Oh, child. So this back and forth, I forgot to mention during the back and forth between Angie and Lisa. Lisa kept accusing Angie of only owning like 1.5 salons, which is not true. Angie's like, no, we own 7. The rest of them are franchises. Like, you deal with French fries while I deal with franchises. I was like, and I'm just like, Angie, why are you shading Wendy's though? And why, side note, why, when you go on social media, Wendy's is like, Lisa, get behind us. We got you. Wendy's Twitter is going back and forth right now with Angie. I was like, not Angie beefing with Wendy's right now. And it's funny too, because it literally is like a Wendy's Twitter account or whatever. And so like, it literally is like the Wendy's emblem going back and forth with Angie. I was like, this show is so unreal. I love it. But anyway, I just had to bring that up because that was funny to me. But back to this actual scene. So we find out though, even though she owns all these salons, that she currently let her certification to actually do hair lapse years and years ago. Because, you know, they have a whole entire full staff and everything. So she... And that actually makes sense, because I remember when we saw her on the saw her do hair last season, she was just shampooing or whatever, and I think you can do that without having the certification. And so right now she's working on getting recertified, and Heather comes to be basically a hair model for her, and so they're putting rollers in her hair, so they're basically doing like a temporary perm look without actually perming her hair. And so then as this is happening, she mentions what has happened since the luncheon. And we find out that Angie and Sean were just like minding their own business at the salon. And out of nowhere, this girl named Sage, and Angie thought that this was a lady who wanted to get her hair done, shows up, and turns out it's Lisa's assistant, and she demands all of her son's products. She wants all of her son's products back. And we then see that Angie hasn't had any of this stuff on the shelves forever because no one was buying it. So she has had it in storage, like in dusty storage. And so she brings it to her, and then basically Lisa Venmos her for the product, and then states that, you know, you need to clean your salon because your salon's dusty, even though Lisa didn't step foot in this salon whatsoever. And then, of course, this causes them to clap back and forth on, you know, on the phone texting. And she was like, instead of sending that money to Venmo, you should send it to the people who you owe in your court documents. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. And my salon's not dusty. Now, me having to put it in storage because it wasn't selling anything is dusty. Your product's dusty because I couldn't sell it. No, that's what she said. Your product's dusty because I couldn't sell it. I was like, oh my God. And now, of course, Heather's like, no. I thought you guys were good. And Angie's like, yeah, we were good until we weren't. Like, you know, she talks about how her hair's great and everything. And then she just constantly just kept like clapping back at her without trying to. And Heather's like, see, this is what we're talking about. You keep doing that. You can't do what you're doing right now and think y'all are going to be good. And she's like, you know, if she's not taking the house, so am I. It's like, no. So Lisa patched up one situation only to have another situation happen right now. So that's where we're at with them too. A mess. Okay. So then next, we do have this brief scene, and I told you already what Whitney was saying when it comes to her perspective. They're at this plant shop, and they meet Brittany. And Brittany's there at this plant shop, and they do apologize and patch things up, because Brittany acknowledges, like, oh my gosh, I did literally all the same things Lisa was doing to you, and I feel like that was way below the belt, so I'm going to apologize for that. She's like, I didn't like me doing all that. And then out of nowhere, we talk about the Jared situation because Whitney's still trying to understand why do you keep going back to this man. And Brittany, of course, can't explain it because she's kind of a ditz. And then Whitney asks about the daughter. She's like, how does the daughter feel about this? She's like, she doesn't feel great about it at all. And it's funny that these two things, the next thing that I'm about to talk about after this is together. Talk about mommy dearest, though. Brittany does not like being a mom, and it's giving she doesn't even like her daughter. She still is debating whether she should choose a man over her daughter. She's still doing that, thinking that is acceptable behavior. And Whitney is getting triggered. She's like, I'm kind of getting triggered because I am your daughter in this situation. In my real life, my mom and I are not cool because of her being like this. And you need to be better than what you're doing. Like, and then she feels like her daughter should make more of the effort for her to be in her life. It's like, although her daughter's an adult, you're really the adult in the situation. You need to do better. Her daughter shouldn't have to do better. You should do better. And I'm glad Brittany is not full-time. I would never want this lady to be full-time. Because this is the thing that makes me really not like her. I like her for the show and when it comes to everything else. But the fact that she just cannot see that her behavior is so problematic and her age being so stunted, and she doesn't even see that her age is stunted on how she acts. Like, she basically acts like a teenager with no worries in the world and no children. She reminds me of someone who should have never had kids. And I hate to come off harsh like that, but it just really grinds my gears that she still thinks choosing a man over her daughter's acceptable behavior. And Whitney's trying to talk some sense into her, but when you see Brittany's facial expressions this whole entire time, she's not getting it. It's just going like this over her head. So I doubt we're going to see a change. And if we're going to see a change, I don't know if it's going to be even genuine. Anyway, moving on. From one mommy dearest to another. Now we have Bronwyn and her mom. And her mom, and Bronwyn kind of alluded to this earlier on in a scene with Lisa about like how her mom's like basically says she needs to be a grandmother before she can be a mom towards Bronwyn again, because the way Bronwyn raises her child is completely different from how her mom raised her. Like, Bronwyn's a lot more free-spirited and more like full transparency type of a parent. Basically a millennial parent. You know, gentle love, that kind of thing. She's definitely a millennial parent. And which makes sense because Bronwyn's a millennial. And her mom is very old school, like very much baby boomer. Don't educate your daughter, don't educate your kids on sexual education. Just say abstinence until you're married, because that works so well historically. Spoiler alert, it didn't. I mean, her mom to me is giving the type of mom who thinks the DARE program worked. That also didn't work, by the way. Like, it's just like, so she is still doubling, quadrupling down on how she raised Bronwyn. It's still not giving her any love, any softness, and is just completely tripling down on her behavior. And she still thinks how she raised Bronwyn was the correct way, even though it turned out the way it did. And basically is kind of putting the blame all on Bronwyn. And then on top of it, she is making herself the victim of how she felt once Bronwyn was pregnant, when really all that was happening to her, Bronwyn, not her. She's like, yeah, I couldn't be seen by the church. I had to continue to lie about your pregnancy. And then Bronwyn proceeds to tell us a story about how her older sister was pregnant at the same time as she was. and they went to go shopping for like a baby shower, but they only went she only threw a baby shower and went and got baby shower gifts for her older sister, but not her. And they were in an awkward situation at a checkout where even the checkout person was like, huh? Because it's not okay. But Bronwyn's mom still thinks that this behavior is way okay, even though it's not. And so Bronwyn's mom is just quadrupling down. And Bronwyn's like, I think the way I'm doing things makes more sense. Of course, I would not want Gwen to get pregnant. But at the same time, if I could do anything for me to be a safe place for her, I think that makes more sense, because that, to me, that would prevent her from being pregnant. Now, I think Bronwyn's version is a little bit of an extreme version of it, because I don't think the boyfriend should live there. But I see what Bronwyn's talking about. I think, honestly, both of them are very extreme cases. I think the openness should still be there, but Bronwyn's daughter's boyfriend should not be living with them. That's pretty much it. Everything else, because she's grown, she's an adult, it's safe to assume they are having the sexuals. Be on top of that. Give her the contraception and everything she needs, because now she's grown. You know, she's an adult. But if it was happening pre her being an adult and you doing all that, that's a lot. I don't know how I feel about all that, but it probably is better that her daughter can talk to her about these things versus her finding out from, you know, one of her friends, one of her little friends, and set her up for failure, and she's basically repeating the cycle again. And Bronwyn basically opens up in her confessional. I think it was earlier on when she was like, I just don't want to be like my mom. So there's a lot of resentment there. I don't know if this show is going to be the show where they're going to resolve their issues. I think they might have to do some parent counseling, and the non-Mormon parent, like, you know, family counselor. Yeah, that's kind of what I see how this needs to end. But other than that, the other thing that I had as a takeaway when it came to this is, if this was me and my mom was talking to me the way her mom was talking to her, she wouldn't be living in my house anymore. But that's just me. But my parents already know how I give it up. Like, they wouldn't even do all that. Like, and I don't think I've ever been in a situation where it could be a thing. Like, my parents have just never been those type of parents. Like, but and to constantly insult and not see the wrong. Like, even when my dad is stubborn and stuff, he turns a corner after a while and we talk it out and we both end up apologizing. This is something different. I don't even know what this is. But like, my last thought on this was, if this was my parents, she wouldn't be living there anymore with me. That's for sure. You know, if this is how you feel, you could feel that way outside of these doors. You can go. You know, if I'm such a bad kid, go live with my sister then. Because where are her siblings at? Why are you living with me then? Since you don't think I could do anything without your help or without someone else's help, you think I'm so dependent on other people. That's crazy. Because the other thing was, in this conversation, she held it over Bronwyn's head that she needed a babysitter while she was going to work full time. I think at this time, this was probably around the time where she was working in the finance industry. So she had a good job. She just needed a babysitter. So you're not even willing to be a grandma at all. You're just now trying to be a grandma just now that she's of age and married. That's wild. But anyway, moving on. Okay, so in the last scene here, we actually have, and I never thought I would see this, Meredith and Angie meeting up for lunch. Y'all know the history of them two. These two have never gotten along. And so Meredith talks about how she's renovating her store, and I guess that's Meredith's storyline this season. Meredith hasn't had a solo. Meredith, okay. I know I say this every single episode, but like, really so far this season, and really all the other seasons, like last season too, a little bit, I don't think Meredith should be removed from the show, but I think she should be a friend of. She should be a friend of, because she is being shown on this show literally as much as Brittany is. And Brittany is a friend of. But anyway, so they're recapping events of like the lunch and everything. And Angie, gets her up to date on her and Lisa still not being good. And Meredith's like, wow, that's crazy. Y'all still ain't good. And Angie, girl, you're doing too much. You're doing too much. So why I'm saying this is now Angie now is trying to interject and say that Lisa's a friend to no one to Meredith. And then she proceeds to tell Meredith about when Angie and Meredith were beefing. Lisa behind the scenes was telling Angie where to go to get dirt on Meredith. Basically wanting them to continue their fights. Do I believe this? Yes. Yes, I do. I completely believe this, because I think that a lot of the women on this show really are being organic and being on the show, trying to develop friendships and relationships. I think Lisa and a lot of the OGs, 'cause I think even Heather's guilty of it too. I think Lisa is fully playing housewife. She doesn't need to be friends with none of these women. She doesn't care about any of these women. She's fully all in on being a housewife, and that's it. And so, yeah, I think she was trying to produce in the back end to continue Angie and Meredith's beef. She wanted to keep it going, keep running it up, because the more there's a story of them beefing, the less you can get in her business. No pun intended. Business as in personal and her professional business that's in question. So that is kind of what I think is happening here. And Meredith is taking it back. She's like, I thought we were good. And I think what Meredith is saying is not that they were good as friends. I know that's what she's saying on the show, but I think really she's like, I thought we had an alliance. When does the alliance break? And Meredith is like, if this is not true and Angie's lying to me, there's going to be a problem. But I don't I'm not going to take what Angie's saying completely off the table. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And if what Angie said is actually true, we're going to have a real problem. And that's kind of how things end. Now, why say Angie was doing too much? Why would you say this to someone you just freshly made up with? Y'all have not been cool for years. This would not be the time for you to do all that. But maybe Angie in her mind was thinking, I better say something before this comes up again. Because I think because we know how Lisa works, she wanted to get in front of it. I think that's kind of what she was thinking from her standpoint. But I don't think there would be a reason for her to get in front of it because of the fact that Angie also mentioned when she said this that she never ever did anything with it. So because she did nothing with it, there's nothing to get in front of. You know what I mean? So this was kind of giving messy. Because it's clear as mud that she wants Meredith on their side. Pretty much similar to what Whitney was trying to do with Meredith last season. Meredith, honestly, this has been a repeating thing where a lot of these women who don't really care for Lisa or are on the conflicting side of Lisa, this is what they do. They always try to go to Meredith to get her on their side. Why do they feel it necessary to do all that? I don't know. But based off of next week's episode, it's going to get messier. It seems like Angie's going to be in some mess. And it seems like from what I saw towards the end of this episode and a little bit of the preview I saw last episode, it looks like she might be the reason why her and Mary are beefing. I don't think this time this was a Mary thing. Anyway, but that does conclude this episode. Please let me think what you thought of the episode. Also, please like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you get anything out of the content. It's your girl Sharon, aka the Mel Nostalgic Runner, and I will see you next time. Bye.